Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. You know, when David Bowie was alive, he took great care in his recorded legacy, re-releasing his albums over and over again, digitally remastering them, bonus tracks, box sets, and all that. But when he passed away, the people in charge of curating his estate have gone above and beyond. For example, recently they did the pop-up store in New York and London. It was really fun. I went there, got a ton of stuff, including this t-shirt, which was fun. But they've gone above and beyond, and the posthumous releases that are nonstop. They are constantly releasing stuff, from his history. Some of the stuff is really great. Some of it is just kind of okay. And I thought it'd be interesting to show you 8 of some of the posthumous releases that they've released from David Bowie. So this is what they look like that I'm going to be showing you. They're all pretty much deluxe kind of stuff, and some of it's great, some of it's not. Let me start with one of my favorite ones, and this was one of the first ones they did after he passed away. Station to Station, of course, one of his most famous albums. I think it's one of the greatest albums of all time. There's the original disc on the top, but when they put this out in a box set, they put 2 more CDs of the Live at the Nassau Coliseum show back in March of '76. That was a pretty famous bootleg. But on this album, it just sounds great. And you got the inside the box, you got the CD, and then you got a double that opens up, showing what the show looked like at the Nassau Coliseum. Great set list. And then also in the box, you got a booklet explaining the whole thing about Station to Station and the tour and the famous Nassau Coliseum show. And then there's postcards in here. Really, really nice set. So if you love Bowie, and I think most people do, then you got to have Station to Station. And if you don't have Station to Station, go out and try to find this one because it is well worth it. This is definitely one of the best posthumous releases from Bowie. Another one that's couple years old was this one. This is a big, beautiful set. This is a box set of Bowie's complete show from Glastonbury back in 2000. Great set list, as you can see. And you got the DVD of the whole show and 2 CDs in this big, thick box with like an obi strip, even though it's not Japanese. And most people who are experts on Glastonbury say Bowie's show there was one of the greatest of all time. And listening to this set, no doubt. What was really cool, the older he got, he was just as good as he ever was. And he sang so great. And he would do these great set lists, mixing up classics and deep stuff. And this is just a spectacular, spectacular show, and nice to have it on DVD as well as CD. So this is another posthumous release that you definitely should get. A great, great live Bowie show, Glastonbury 2000. They released a lot of live stuff. I got into Bowie in 1974. I was 11 years old, and the way I got into him was, these are, of course, I had them on vinyl. Diamond Dogs, which was the first Bowie album I ever got, which is still my favorite Bowie album. It's not his best one, but it's special for me because it was the first one I ever got. And David Live, which was the live album recorded on that tour. So these were the 2 things that I started with Bowie. Posthumously, they released this album called Cracked Actor, Live Los Angeles 1974. It's very, very similar to the David Live album. I know it's kind of hard to see. So if you have the David Live album, do you really need this album? Probably not. But, nice to have like a whole complete show from that tour. Again, it's very, very similar to David Live, which I think is a great live record, but a lot of people, certainly it was panned back in those days, but I really like it. Another live album that they recently put out is this one. Now this one is really hard to find and it goes for a ton of money. And this is the one I wanted more than anything. This is called Bowie I'm Only Dancing the Soul Tour 74. So you're probably thinking the Soul Tour 74. I thought Diamond Dogs was the 74 tour. Well, it was. And Bowie, the Diamond Dogs tour was this amazingly huge production. He did the first leg, and after the first leg, he shut it down, got new musicians partly, and redid the tour as this tour. Who would do that? I mean, he put so much money into this stage show, the David Live Diamond Dogs tour, and then he just tossed it away for the second leg of the tour and started playing live stuff that was unreleased that would later be heard on the Young Americans album. So this album, that this authorized release posthumously, is the second half of that 74 tour. It's the only recorded issue of that tour, and I could not wait to hear it because it's very different than the David Live show. Unfortunately, the quality of this album is terrible. It sounds like an average bootleg. So it's worth having as a collector, but they're charged a ton of money for this CD. This is like a $30 CD, if not more. So I would be very weary. Go into this knowing that the quality is not that good, but if you're a Bowie completist, well, then you kind of want to have it. Speaking of live shows, his second official live record after David Live was Stage. Interesting live record because it was a double vinyl album, and each side was split between an album that it represented. One side was Ziggy Stardust, one was Low, one was Heroes, one was Station to Station. And it was, to me, a very sterile sounding live album. You barely heard the crowd, and it did the cardinal sin of fading out between the songs, which I can't stand on a live album. They redid Stage, digitally remastered it, and this is what it looked like on CD. And instead, they resequenced it and made it sound like the concert. So I think the originally remastered of Stage was a much better listen. Why am I telling you about that? Because one of the posthumous releases is this one, which is called Welcome to the Blackout Live London 78, which is a complete show from London of that Stage tour. And I didn't know what to expect about this because I think Stage is okay, better the digitally remastered, but I didn't know what to expect about this. But I got to tell you, it works really great. This is one of my favorite posthumous releases for sure. Great set list, as you could see. It's live, warts and all, which is what I like. You could hear some mistakes if you listen closely. Great set list. Terrific live record. If you can get this one, Welcome to the Blackout Live in London, highly, highly recommended. Gonna keep going. Two more. We'll go to that one last. This is a box set called The Width of a Circle. Beautifully packaged. There's 2 CDs. Beautiful, thick booklet. And what this is, it's got reproduction of clippings, song lyrics, just beautifully done. You really couldn't ask more from the packaging. And what this album is, this box set, is really interesting. It's kind of a mishmash. It starts off with a John Peel show from 1970, which is interesting. These, really, really old kind of tracks. And then disc 2 is a mishmash of singles and another BBC stuff and some 2020 mixes of some rare early tracks. It's basically Bowie circa 69 and 70, which is, if you want to go back in time, you're pretty much talking about when he was working on The Man Who Sold the World. And stuff that's also on David Bowie album, which was reissued as Space Oddity because he had the hit, obviously, with Space Oddity. Sorry for the glare. But a lot of stuff that he was working on here is on this collection. So if you're a big fan of Bowie circa 69 and 70, this is a really interesting collection. Some of it appeared previously on Bowie at the Beeb. which is a great old collection that I love. A lot of the stuff that's on CD1 is on this, but it's complete on the new box set. So if you like Bowie 6970, really good collection. It's early stuff. You know, it's not Bowie that if you're a casual fan, you're not going to really know this stuff. And are you really going to love it? I don't know. But if you're a big Bowie fan, definitely cool. Which brings me to the final release, which is one of his most recent ones. This is called Toy. Being a completist that I am, I got the box set, which has 3 CDs. This is an interesting album. Basically, after he did the Hours album, which is an album I really like, he decided to go back and re-record stuff from the beginning of his career, circa this album. This is an old album, and this is a collection called the Duran Anthology 66 to 68. Now, this collection is really interesting. It's got 1 CD, it's got 27 songs. But basically what Bowie did after the Hours tour and before he did Heathen, he took that band who were hot off from being on the road, and he went back and he re-recorded many of the tracks from back in the day. And he wanted to put it out and call the album Toy. His record company didn't want to go for it because it's like modern Bowie doing the earliest stuff that he ever did. Sounding like nothing like, those songs didn't sound like anything like Bowie had done, you know, decades later. And they didn't want to release it. So now they released it after he's gone, and not only did they release it, but they released different versions of it, and I bought the 3 CD box set, which you do not need, because there's a second CD is of remixes, which don't sound all that different, and the third CD is kind of like acoustic demo versions of them. Do you need this stuff? Well, Bowie back then, circa 66, 67, 68, didn't sound anything like the Bowie that casual fans will know. Are these songs that great? Most of them are not. But I like these songs. I can get into them and enjoy them for what they are. Bowie, almost hippie-like with an acoustic guitar. There's a lot of acoustic guitar stuff on here. Nothing like the Bowie that would come later. So it's a really interesting listen, but to be completely honest with you, I prefer the original versions. The re-recorded versions, when he did this, they don't sound all that different than this, except his voice is, decades later. And his voice still sounded great. But I could understand really why the record label didn't want to release it, because I don't think it's overly commercial, don't think it would have done that well when he was still alive, and it's really not essential. So if you have the old original versions, I wouldn't go for Tour. But if you don't, then you want to investigate what Bowie sounded like in his hippie days, playing acoustic guitar with long hair, you might like it. There's one more I want to talk about, which is also kind of a cool collection. Bowie, back in 1996, did some live stuff of these songs. And I like it because it's not like overly commercial songs. The version of Aladdin Sane on here is amazing. Basically almost like acoustic versions recorded live. I think it was for a TV show. This is a really, really cool album that they released also posthumously called Changes Now Bowie. So this is not a greatest hits album. These are not the original versions. They're like acoustic reworkings recorded live in the studio back in 1996 in the TV studio. This is a really, really cool find. So out of these 10 or so posthumous albums, what's the ones that if you're just a casual fan, would I tell you to get? Well, this one's really cool. I love that one. Surprisingly, I really, really enjoyed and liked this Live 78 album. Kind of supplants Stage. And you got to go with Glastonbury, which is one of his greatest shows, latter-day shows. God, he aged so well. And last but not least, you got to go with the Station to Station box set with the Live from the Nassau Coliseum show from '76. So there you go. A look at some of Bowie's posthumous work. 10 albums. Again, you want to start out, you can't go wrong with these, that's for sure. Alrighty, hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit subscribe, tell your friends, and check out my other videos. And thank you for tuning in. Hope you have a great weekend.